All right, so what do we say? As soon as the Jewish people came into the land of Israel, they had a command to build the tabernacle, which they had already had this tabernacle in the desert. And as soon as they came into the land of Israel, they built it in Gilgal. That was there 14 years, and then it went to Shiloh. It was there for 369 years. And then it went to Nov, and then it went to Gibon. And altogether, it was there 50... it was in Gibon 57 years. Okay. What is the main thing of the Holy Temple? Remember, we learned. Do we have a picture? I think we had a picture. No. So we said these are the main things of the Holy Temple. And we talked about this last time. We had pictures of it and everything. I think maybe over here, if there's a way to go backward. Is there a way to go back? Oh. Yes? No. Okay, mistake. Good, okay. Next time we'll have some more pictures. All right, so we said that there is a holy of holies. That's where the ark was with the tablets. That was the holy of holies. Then there was the holy. That was a little more outward. Let's take it like this. When a person came in, he came in to the tabernacle in the desert. So there was no Ezrat Nashim. There was no big open courtyard like it was then. In the tabernacle, there was no open courtyard on the outside. There was the courtyard where the altar was. And then if you kept walking, you came in from the east, you went more into the west, the altar, and then there was a laver where the Kohanim would wash their hands and feet. And then you went into the holy. Now in the temple, there were two things that were added on. One thing that was added on was, as soon as you entered into the main door, you didn't go into the yard where the altar was. There was what's called the Ezrat Nashim, and there were these 4 different rooms over there. There were 4 different rooms where they kept the wood, where they kept the oil, where the Metzoras would go, and where the Nazir would go. And then you would go into that area which corresponded to the area in the tabernacle where the altar was. That was called the outer altar. In the Holy Temple, it was called the bronze altar. Bronze with a copper altar, nechoshet. And then, now up to there, where the altar was, only the Kohanim could go. Then the Kohanim could also go into the outside room, which was called the holy, and there was the candelabra on the left. The showbread, the face bread, was on the right. And right in the middle, which was actually the first thing that you met when you went in, it was in the middle, but it was toward the entrance of the holy, was a golden altar, much smaller, and that was incense was. And then you went into the Holy of Holies, which you couldn't go in. No one could go into the Holy of Holies. Only the high priest could go in, and he could only go in to do the service on Yom Kippur. Okay. Now we're talking about the altar, the outer altar. Let's do 10, 15 minutes. The outer altar has to be made from stones. And that's what it says in the Torah, Mizbach Adamat Asuli. That it has to be made from stones, and it had to be, what does it mean? Adamah, it had to be, these stones had to be joined to the ground. You couldn't build it from bricks, levanim, cement, even though they would smear cement on the outside of it, says once in a while. Once, what is twice a year. They would attach it to the ground. What does it mean? It has to be, this altar has to be attached to the ground. You cannot build it on top of any sort of building, boards or anything that has a hole underneath it. It has to be directly on the ground. and also not on top of any sort of rooms or anything. There can't be anything like it says is mizbach adama. It says if you make a altar from dirt, it doesn't mean if, it means you must. This is one of the mipia shemua from what the rabbis understood from Moses on Mount Sinai. This is not optional. This is an obligation. Im here means that you must make the altar from stone, set on the ground. Law number 14. And this, by the way, is the commentary of Rabbi Steinsaltz. In the dark letters, that's the Ramba'm. And the calls stone, if on the altar that has a little chip on it. In other words, it had to be totally smooth. If it had a little chip or a little, what is it, charitz, a little crack or a break in it that was even big enough that was, if you put your finger, your fingernail, you had to run your fingernail down the side. There had to be that nothing stopped it, just like a slaughtering knife. It had to be totally smooth. If there was any little chip or any little thing that stopped your fingernail, then just like a slaughtering knife, right? It said that it can't. Therefore, it's pasul. It's no good. It's no good for the kevish and for the mizbech. What's the kevish? The kevish was the ramp that went up. It was forbidden to build stairs, like it says, "Avanim shleimot tivneh et mizbach Hashem Elokecha." Where could you find totally smooth stones? Where could you get such things like this? Where did you bring them from? Right? That had no, and that iron never touched them at all. Never. Right? How could you find stones that were like that were flats, totally flat? So first of all, it says you had to get them from ground that had never been plowed. That had never been plowed, because it could be if it had been plowed, maybe the plow hit the stone, no good. So what does it mean? They would dig down deep until they reached to a place where you could see that no one had ever dug there before. You would take out these stones, or they would go to the sea, to the middle of the ocean, the Mediterranean Ocean, who knows? And they would build with them these stones. And so it is also the stones of the Heichal, and the Azoros. They had to be made from complete stones, and they had to be smooth, without any blemishes or nicks or anything in them. Stones, which were the Heichal. Now the Heichal, what is the Heichal? The Heichal is the whole building. Right? We're talking about the second temple. The building, first temple also. The second, the building had to be from these smooth stones. But it's a little bit different. Stones from the Heichal that made the walls and the outside of the temple, and the stones which are on the floor of these courtyards in the Holy Temple, if they had a little nick in them or a blemish or whatever, they're no good. And there's nothing you can do with them. You can't fix them up. It's impossible to use them for any regular purpose. You can't say, okay, it got nicked, so I'll use it, build my house from it. Nice stone. Can't do it. Any stone that iron touched it, even though that it did not get disqualified, that it did not get a nick in it, but it is disqualified for building the altar, not for the Beit HaMikdash, not for the actual building, but for the altar. If iron touched it, on the altar, it was no good. Now, how could you possibly build a thing like that? You find stones that were totally straight, that fixed up one another. So there used to be this worm. We'll see. It says that iron, what's wrong with iron? Iron shortens the life of man. And the whole idea of the altar was to lengthen the life of all humanity. Therefore, you're not allowed to chip away or chisel away or smooth down the stones of the altar or the ramp that goes up to it. Like it says, it says you're not allowed to, if you lift a sword or any sort of a metal implement on it and it touches it, then it has become disqualified. Even though that if you did put an iron to it, you could probably use the stones from the altar. If it was before you put them in the altar, you could use them probably to build the temple with. But after it went into the altar and you touched it with a iron, it would be no good. Abona evan shenigabo bezem mizbech v'chavish loka. What if you say, you had a stone, beautiful stone, it was all smooth and everything, but a piece of metal touched it. Metal touched it. It's no good. And if you say, well, listen, I'll use it anyway, who's going to know? So if somebody does find out about it, the punishment is lashes. Like it says, lo siv ne'atem gazit. You're not allowed to hew out or chisel away the stones. What if a person builds with a stone that has a blemish in it? So you've transgressed a positive commandment. A stone that had become blemished, chipped away, or that iron touched it after you put it into the mizbeach, after you put it into the altar, then that stone you can't do anything with it. You have to throw it away. But all the other stones are okay. You can use that. Umalavnin, they would smear cement on the altar. Some people say they would clean it off. In any case, they would do it twice a year, on Pesach and right before Sukkot, and they would whitewash it. Some see they would whitewash, but they would have to do it with a towel. A towel, but nothing that had an iron on it, because the iron would touch it, it would negate it. Right? The Ravad that he makes comments, sometimes disagrees with the Ramba'm. He said that they would do it with pieces of wood, and also other things they would work with wood. You did not build any steps to the altar. Like it says, don't go on steps on my altar, but you build it like a ramp. And the ramp would go little by little from the top of the altar until the ground. And this was called the kevish. If you decided that you wanted to make a stairs to go up, then the punishment is lashes. And also, a person who purposely breaks or chips a stone from the altar, or from anywhere in the whole entire heichal, or from the ulam mizbeach, from the whole temple, or anywhere, if you did it on purpose, also the punishment is lashes. Like it says, it says that you should destroy the altars of idolatry, but you cannot do so with God, with the house of God. You can't do that. So it's forbidden to put a chip in any of the stones that is in the altar and the step, on the ground, or on the building of the holy temple. Okay, and tomorrow we'll get to the menorah. We'll get to the other vessels that are there, the candelabra and etc. Okay, let's go briefly. I know we're taking a bit of time, but let's go briefly into the laws of Tisha B'Av. You think